Okay, for decades, right, the global fight against extreme poverty, it always seemed like this story of slow but steady progress. But what if the very way we've been defining the problem has been, well, wrong? Today, we're diving into Sustainable Development Goal number 1, because it turns out the goalposts for ending poverty have just been moved a lot.
So, this is the big question, isn't it? After everything we've been through, global crises, the pandemic, all the economic instability, are we actually winning the fight against poverty? And the answer, it's not a simple yes or no. It's way more complex, mainly because the very way we measure the problem has just been completely shaken up. And here it is. This is the game changer. The World Bank has officially updated the international poverty line. It's gone from just over $2 a day all the way up to $3 a day. Now you might think, oh, that's not a huge jump. But believe me, this isn't just some small tweak. This is a massive recalibration. It's based on brand new cost of living data from over 160 countries, and it totally redefines what it means to be living in extreme poverty today.
So, what does that actually mean in human terms? Well, it means the number of people we now estimate are living in extreme poverty is 808 million. That is a huge jump from the old number. Now, to be super clear, this doesn't mean we've suddenly gone backwards. It just means our old picture of the problem, it was incomplete. And now we have a much more accurate and frankly sobering understanding of its true scale. So this brings us to our first big idea here. The goalposts have moved. They've officially been shifted, and we really need to get our heads around what that means for those big global goals for 2030. What's so interesting about this chart is the story it tells, right? On one hand, you have to look at the incredible progress we've made since 1990. I mean, back then, almost 44% of the entire world lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number is under 10%. That is a truly monumental achievement. But then you look to the right. The projection for 2030, it's still at 8.9%. And that is a very, very long way from the goal of 0. And this just perfectly illustrates the tough reality we're facing. Things like the slow recovery from COVID, all this economic instability, and these intensifying climate shocks, they've basically stalled our progress. At the pace we're going now, we are simply not going to make it. It's like the finish line is right there in sight, but we're slowing down to a walk when we really need to be sprinting. So why? Why is progress slowing down so much? In this next section, we're going to break down the anatomy of the problem and really see where poverty is most deeply dug in. You know, this image is so important because it puts a human face on a really key concept, the working poor. We're talking about people who work, and often work incredibly hard in informal markets just like this one, but they simply don't earn enough to escape poverty. They don't have job security, no benefits, and no reliable safety net to fall back on. And this data, wow, it just shows you how stark that reality is. Globally, about 7% of all workers are still living in poverty. But then, look at the number for the world's least developed countries. It's almost 30%. Let that sink in. Nearly 1 out of every 3 workers in these nations cannot earn their way out of extreme poverty. And what's happening is that the problem is also becoming intensely focused in certain areas. More than 3/4 of the world's poorest people are now clustered in 2 specific places, sub-Saharan Africa and countries that are affected by fragility and conflict. So you see, this isn't a global problem in the same way it was 30 years ago. It's really becoming a highly localized crisis. And that concentration brings us to a really critical reason why poverty is so persistent: social protection. And what we see here, it's truly a tale of 2 worlds. This number is just almost unbelievable. Now, there has been some progress. For the first time ever, more than half the world's population is covered by at least one social benefit. But that still leaves 3.8 billion people completely unprotected. That is nearly half the entire planet with absolutely no safety net. And this right here, this is that tale of 2 worlds in a single chart. In high-income countries, almost 86% of people have access to social protection. But in low-income countries, it's less than 10%. That gap explains everything. It's why an economic shock or health crisis can be a temporary setback in one part of the world, but a permanent, life-altering catastrophe in another. So, okay, what will it actually take to close these gaps and get us back on track? Well, that brings us to the price of progress and the kind of investment that's going to be required to make it all happen. A huge driver of this inequality is the spending gap on essential services. Things like education and healthcare. This chart shows it pretty clearly. Advanced economies spend a much bigger slice of their GDP on these things. And this isn't just about fighting poverty today. It's about investing in the human capital that allows people to escape it for good.
And here is the price tag. According to the data, to close these gaps in essential services and social protection for low and middle-income countries, we would need an additional $1.4 trillion every single year. I know, it's a massive number, but it really frames the scale of the global commitment that's actually required here.
All right, so we know the problem and we know the price. So let's look at our final section. What is the specific, actionable path forward that the reports have identified?
The strategy really boils down to 3 core pillars. First, we have to massively expand social protection to create those crucial safety nets. Second, close those spending gaps we were just talking about in health and education. And third, a really vital but often overlooked area, securing formal land rights.
And this slide, it reveals such a critical gap between what people think and what's actually true. So, get this. While 2/3 of people feel like their land is secure, less than half of them actually have the formal documents to prove it. And that piece of paper, it is everything. It's what unlocks access to finance, it gives you legal protection, and it can turn a simple home into a really powerful economic asset.
And inside that gap, there is a profound gender inequality. Only about 1/4 of women hold legal land documents. This is just a massive barrier to their economic empowerment. It literally prevents women from building wealth and security for themselves and for their families. Tackling poverty has to mean tackling this disparity head-on. So this is where we end up. The data is crystal clear. The goalposts have moved, the challenge is more concentrated than ever, but the solutions? We actually know what they are. We have the tools. We're talking social protection, investing in people, and securing legal rights, especially for women. So the final question really isn't about what to do. It's about whether we, as a global community, will finally find the collective will to actually do it.